Si comes tienes que lavar tu plato, Firulais. Anda, enjuágalo bien. No me gruñas. A ver, con la esponja eso. Y enjuaga bien que luego deja todo jabonoso. Eso así, muy bien, aunque de malas.
Welcome to the motherfucking lady. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. I'm sure most of you have heard by now. MVP signs Skye Nicolson, forms an alliance with Matchroom. Aussie Nicholson, a two-weight world champion, began a professional boxing career with Matchroom, who today joined forces with MVP as part of a strategic alliance to grow women's boxing. Women's boxing is entering a new era, and I want to be right at the center of it, Nicholson said. This partnership with MVP and Matchroom gives me the opportunity to chase legacy, compete in the biggest fights out there, and help continue pushing women's boxing forward. Now, this should not be confused with Skye Nicolson migrating from Matchroom to MVP like so many other women already have. This is a co-promotional arrangement that would in effect give Skye access to some of MVP's fighters, her being one among them, though not exclusively. My goal has always been to test myself against the very best and be involved in the biggest fights in women's boxing. I truly believe this move puts me in the best possible position to do exactly that. I'm excited for what's ahead and can't wait for this next chapter of my career to unfold. Nicholson will defend her WBC junior featherweight title against former champion Miyo Yoshida on August 29th at the BP Pulse Live in Birmingham, England. The 10-round bout will air live on Sky Sports as part of the Mayer vs. Cameron undercard. Skye is one of the most recognizable athletes in women's boxing today, MVP co-founders Jake Paul and Nikisa Badarian said. As a two-division world champion, Commonwealth Games gold medalist, Olympian, and one of Australia's biggest stars, she represents the caliber of athlete we're building MVP around. Nicholson beat Sarah Mahfoud by UD in April of 2024 to win her first world title at featherweight. She then lost it to Tiara Brown, who is also promoted by MVP just under a year later and has since won 3 straight fights at 122, where she was elevated from WBC interim to full champion after former undisputed champion Ellie Scottney moved up in weight earlier this year. There are some obvious perks to Skye Nicolson going into business with MVP, but the partnership between MVP and Matchroom can't be one way. It can't just be Matchroom fighters being used on MVP shows. As I stated in my previous video, I would like to see some of MVP's girls sprinkled on Matchroom shows, the way they used to. If this is really about growing women's boxing and enhancing the visibility for all of these fighters, then it can't just be one promoter promoting them. Streets are talking. I saw veteran content creator T Street Controversy take to his social media saying, "It's been heavily rumored that MVP are bleeding money promoting women's boxing." I heard a similar rumor earlier this year, but I wasn't sure. I wasn't completely sure what the nature of their deal was with Sky Sports or ESPN, but you get the impression they're not giving MVP $80 or $90 million annually to do shows like what they were giving Top Rank way back when. So what kind of budget are they giving them, if they are giving them a budget at all? Seemed promising at first that ESPN was back in boxing in the form of MVP and their robust stable of Valkyries, but as much of a proponent of the women as I am, it's really not a substitute for the arrangement they had with Top Rank. There are still a lot of people out there, they're not big on women's boxing, so when you have a stable primarily comprised of female fighters, that's gonna turn some people off, turn them away. Skye's over there now. And it's for this reason I stress that this alliance can't be one way. It's gotta be to where sometimes Matchroom fighters fight on MVP shows, and sometimes MVP fighters fight on Matchroom shows, doing so sparingly based on the date and location of a card. It can't just be Matchroom fighters fighting on MVP shows. It's gotta work both ways. Otherwise, it won't work.
Sorry, you were gonna say something.
No, go ahead.
Okay. When you see Dana up there, the pressers and whatnot, do you feel like he's invested in this? Do you feel like he's all in? Do you feel like he's totally in control of what's going on?
Well, obviously he has to be all in, but he has no clue what he's doing. He has no clue what fighters are under Zuffa. I mean, that's, you know, maybe he's getting to know the sport, but he's not invested in this. He's all about the bottom line. That's it. Every fighter is a number to this organization, because when you're under a public traded company, it's all about the bottom line. And that's exactly what I can see in the future. These guys just using all these fighters for their benefit. That's the way it works. That's corporate America. So look, I'm sitting back here, enjoying my little tea and my coffee at Pebble Beach, playing some golf, and I'm ready to rumble. I'm ready to go out there, promote Cepeda with Roche, and Ryan Garcia with Conor Ben. It's going to be great for boxing, great for the sport. So I'm looking forward to that.
Oscar warns about TKO's more corporate approach to combat sports as if the alternative is some sort of a failsafe. Just take TKO and Zuffa boxing out of the equation and imagine that they didn't launch earlier this year. Take Turkey LL Sheik out of the equation also, and all of the money that he's poured into boxing the last 2 years. Take him out of it, and all the fights that he made. Do you think that all of that was going to happen on its own? Bivol versus Beterbiev, Fury versus Usyk, those Ring Magazine cards, Matchroom versus Queensberry. For this mental exercise, do away with every single fight, every single card paid for by Turkey LL Sheik, and ask yourself, were those fights going to happen on their own? How many of them? I notice a lot of people still like to be childish about this, when the truth is, boxing all by itself, the way that it was, the existing framework, has been going in the wrong direction. That's why NBC left, Fox, Showtime, ESPN. Doing things the way that they were doing things, the sport has become smaller in this country. Oscar says that the TKO fighters are just a number, that corporate approach to combat sports, but maybe that's how it needs to be. He warns that they're kicking out vast sums of cash now, but after a while, they're going to scale those efforts back. Though you tell me, isn't that the exact same thing that DAZN did? When they debuted in the American market, they were kicking out vast sums of cash. They gave Mikey Garcia $7 million to fight Jesse Vargas, Jose Ramirez $4 million to fight Mighty Mo Hooker. They were doing the exact same thing, and eventually, they scaled those efforts back. I remember the fortune they paid Gennady Golovkin for his first few fights on the platform. Obscene money that those fights weren't worth. They were doing the exact same thing, and eventually, they scaled those efforts back. So is it all of a sudden a bad thing if Zuffa and TKO do the same thing? They're just doing now what DAZN did years ago, trying to draw talent to their banner, to their platform, by paying big cash. And yes, eventually, they're going to scale those efforts back. Dana White doesn't know what he's doing. His portfolio and the current state of affairs at the UFC says the opposite, who's regularly in the black. Unlike so many promoters in the sport of boxing, UFC regularly turns over a profit. They're not operating at a deficit like so many promoters in boxing, regularly in the red to satisfy the overblown financial demands of fighters who want money they're not good for. That cannot continue. Dana White doesn't know what he's doing, according to Oscar, yet Turkey LL Sheik picked him to be his point man in America and not you. So what does that say about you? Is there supposed to be something nefarious about getting a return on your investment? Because when a promoter signs a fighter, that's what that is. Oh, to TKO, the fighters are just a number. Well, that's how it's supposed to be. Until you prove your worth, until you prove you're above average. You are just a fucking number. So what? Everybody's not a fucking superstar. You're not supposed to kick out superstar money to any Joe Blow with 2 boxing gloves and a gum shield. Fucking right, the fighters are just a number. Expendable assets, put simply, unless that fighter can prove that he or she is above average.
Are you surprised Shakur Stevenson signed with them?
Yes. I am, but I'm not, because, again, they're offering these guys a lot of money for 1 fight, 2 fight, 3 fight deals, just to lure everybody in, just to let everybody know, oh my gosh, look at what we're doing. We're paying all these monies. But then again, long term, they're going to change the contracts up. They're going to lure you in, just like the Trojan horse, and they're going to fuck you. That's the bottom line. So that's exactly what happened with Shakur Stevenson. He went for the big money, and it's a shame because we at DAZN, with all the promoters, have all the opponents. So I don't understand what they're doing. I don't understand why they're separating themselves from the rest of the boxing world.
Shakur Stevenson signing to Zuffa now is no different than when Devin Haney signed to Matchroom and DAZN ages ago. It's the same move made for the same reason, because they offered the most money. All of this doom and gloom that everybody's forecasting is really just fear of competition, that because Zuffa's got so much money, they can draw a lot of fighters to them and in effect drive the cost of everything up. It's not that Oscar's afraid that fighters are going to get screwed over if they go to Zuffa. It's that he's afraid Zuffa's going to drive the cost of everything up. They're going to make it harder to hang on to the fighters that you have. Imagine that the fighters that you have enter free agency and they're free to field offers from different promotional outfits. Are you going to be able to match what Zuffa has to offer them? Because if you can't, then you know what's going to happen. You know where they're going to go. So to discourage them from going over there, you start talking about how Zuffa's going to jerk them. They're the Trojan horse. They're the bad guys. Telling you that none of this is for fear that fighters are going to get screwed over by going to Zuffa. It's fear of competition entering the boxing space. What he's now doing to Dana White is no different to what he was doing years ago to Eddie Hearn when he entered the American market. It was for the same reason. It was the same thing. Fear of competition. Now, I'm not telling all of you that Zuffa is the answer to all of boxing's woes, boxing's myriad of problems. What they are is an alternative to the existing framework that some fighters are electing to try out. And maybe it works for them, maybe it doesn't. But boxing all by itself, without Zuffa or TKO, was already heading in the wrong direction. American boxing as a sport declined long before Zuffa boxing launched, long before Turki El Al-Sheikh entered into the boxing space and poured money into it. It was already going in this direction. Oscar's just worried about the new kid on the block coming into it and making his job harder. Though before you adhere to any of his warnings and fear-mongering, consider that if it were DAZN doing the Garcia versus Ben fight, they would have likely billed that as a pay-per-view to me and you, whereas the way it is, we get to see it at no additional charge on Paramount Plus. I would call that a good thing. And so long as they keep doing shit like that, you'll get no complaints from me. A DAZN subscription costs more than a Paramount Plus subscription, so that if Zuffa on Paramount is bringing us boxing at a cheaper price, I would call that a good thing. Wouldn't you?
I think you're a hater. You know, like, a lot of people say, oh man, Bud always hating. Like, what I had to hate on him for?
Right.
You know, I didn't support him in the Olympic trials. I didn't been in the locker room at his fights, you know, supporting him. So why would I need to hate on him?
Got you.
You know, like I said, I want to see him win. I want to see him go far as far as he can. But I think people do the same thing with Boots as they did with Spence.
Right.
You know, and it's our people, it's the urban community that
That's an absolute fact. Terrence Crawford's biggest critics, his biggest detractors, are members of his own community, always propping up someone else instead of him. Maybe he doesn't fit enough stereotypes for them. Maybe he's not dysfunctional enough. Because he doesn't have a substance abuse problem like Errol Spence Jr. did or Jermall Charlo. Because he's not a chatty patty like Adrian Broner, always shooting off at the mouth about things he can't back up. What did any of those guys do to endear themselves to the boxing community except act like a bunch of jackasses and derail their own boxing careers? I saw a Twitter user who goes by the name Catterall's Philly Shell say, Bud talks about Boots way more than I've seen Boots talk about him. Why is this GOAT so bitter? Who's bitter? Terrence Crawford has been the biggest part of promoting Jaron Ennis for 3 or 4 years now. In fact, nobody knew who Boots was until the people at Showtime started comparing him to Terrence. This Catterall's Philly Shell girl must have been living under a rock when all of that happened. I'd wager that she wasn't really paying attention to boxing back then. She couldn't have been, because the biggest part of promoting Boots was likening him to Terrence. So that when Terrence addresses the entire production, you want to castigate him, accuse him of being bitter? Terrence said it better than I could. What on earth would he have to be bitter about? Boots would be lucky, damn lucky, to have a fraction of the success in his career that Terrence Crawford has already had with his, retiring undefeated as a 5-weight world champion, 4-time Ring Magazine, 4-time Lineal, 3-time undisputed. What on earth would he have to be bitter about? The bitter ones, I think, are his detractors, who have been at this for years now, whether it's on behalf of Errol Spence Jr. or more recently on behalf of Canelo Alvarez. The bitter ones, I believe, are the people criticizing him because he's given them a great deal to be bitter about. Not fitting the mold they want him to, not playing up certain stereotypes like so many PBC fighters do, not being dysfunctional enough for them, not being enough of a train wreck, being on the straight and narrow. Or haven't you noticed the kind of characters these people often gravitate towards? They would sooner put Gervonta Davis on a pedestal than Terence Crawford. To frame this as anything other than Terence addressing the constant effort to undermine him with some new booty fighter that hasn't accomplished half of what he's accomplished is disingenuous, like many of the criticisms he's faced over the years. Because he just randomly started talking about Jaron Ennis for no reason? Is that how you want to frame it? The subject matter in its entirety is a subject that is often brought to him. That's why it's being broached. These are the questions they want to ask him. These are the fighters they want him to talk about, so he addresses it. And you get mad at him. Can't waste good logic on illogical people. I hardly expect Catterall's Philly Shell to answer all of these rhetorical questions because, underneath it all, she knows the answers the same as I do. What the fuck does Terence Crawford have to be bitter about? Are you serious? No, these are generally unserious people living unserious lives, and where you want to accuse him of being bitter, I think you're the bitter one. So after literally retiring, the most accomplished American-born boxer of the last 15 years, he's not allowed to broach these subjects. He's not allowed to talk about it, because if he does, he must be bitter. You guys are a bunch of fucking cornflakes, enamored with every new booty fighter that comes along. They don't have to do much to impress you guys, because your hierarchy of thought is not based on merit, it's based on feelings. Fucking feelings. That's why nothing about these guys and gals in the boxing space ever makes the least bit of sense.
Terrence is jealous of Boots.
He's bitter because of all the things that Boots is doing that Terence Crawford never did, because of all the money Boots is making that Terence never made. What the fuck, are you retarded?
Another rhetorical question.